listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, the Mutual Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, in Europe on Radio X, as well as on the Digital Broadcast Network and the Digital Satellite Network. If you'd like to send us an email, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can always find out what's going on in the X-Zone Radio Show, past, present, and future, at www.xzoneradio.com. My next guest I've had the pleasure of having on the show many times before. Her name is Dr. Susan Shumsky, and she's dedicated her life to helping people take command of their lives in highly effective, powerful, positive ways. She is the author of 13 books published by Simon & Schuster, Random House, and New Page. She's a pioneer in the human potential field. She has spent more than 45 years teaching thousands of people meditation, prayer, affirmation, and intuition. Her books have been published in several languages worldwide, and several were #1 Amazon bestsellers. Now, they include Divine Revelation, Miracle Prayer, How to Hear the Voice of God, Ascension, Exploring Meditation, Exploring Auras, Exploring Chakras, Instant Healing, The Power of Auras, The Power of Chakras, and the upcoming Awaken Your Third Eye. Dr. Shumsky is highly respected as a spiritual teacher, award-winning author, and founder of Divine Revelation, a unique field-proven technology for contacting the divine presence. Joining me now is Dr. Susan Shumsky. And Dr. Susan, always great having you back here in the X-Zone. You are one busy lady.
That's true. I am, actually. And thank you for inviting me back again.
It's always a great pleasure talking to you. I find you to be one of the most inspirational people I know.
Oh, well, thank you.
Doctor, over the number of years that you've been teaching, meditation, prayer, affirmations, and so on, have you seen a big change in society?
I've seen a huge change in society, not necessarily since I started teaching, but over the last 50 years, I would say. And what I've seen is a huge upsurge in interest in spirituality, in yoga, in healthy living, healthy lifestyles. It was very, very different way back when, in the olden days, when I was young. It was really different. You would go to the grocery store, and what you would find is the fresh things you would find would be meat and potatoes and tomatoes and some fruit and some iceberg lettuce, and that would be about it. And now we have this huge proliferation of all kinds of healthy, fresh foods and organic foods. Way back then, there were 2 esoteric bookstores in the entire country, one in Los Angeles and one in New York. And now every mainstream bookstore has esoteric books, paranormal books in a totally different world. We find yoga classes on every corner. We find martial arts. You would not find that back then. So this world is totally changed from how it was a few decades ago.
Why do you think the great interest in meditation, prayer, intuition, and different types of religious philosophies now?
Well, one thing is that there's a great proliferation of information on the internet, and people are always curious about things that are kind of secret or hidden from view. So I think that that's part of it. But also, and I'm not sure exactly why this is, but the vibration of the planet has lifted over the last 50 years. And so people are able to have spiritual experiences much more quickly, much more easily than they did way back when.
Doctor, please stand by. You and I have to take our first break. Exonation, my guest this hour is Dr. Susan Shumsky. Her website is www.drsusan.org. That's www.drsusan.org. And Dr. Susan Shumsky and I will return on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Once again, I love getting your emails, X-Zone Nation, and, some of you worry me. We're just going to leave that the way it is, because you know who you are. Well, you should know who you are anyway. And just send me your emails. Love them. And you always get a reply back. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. I am Rob McConnell. Dr. Shumsky and I return right after this break. Don't go away. Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Her wonderful book, The Fun of Dying, is available on Amazon and at stores worldwide wherever books are sold. You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Wilda Wiecka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we will weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Wilda Wiecka, and the Science of Magic right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Starr began to demonstrate a metaphysical connection to the spirit world as a little girl. Her family noticed the connection, but it was a great-grandmother who told the family that Linnea was indeed gifted. The great-grandmother, who was also gifted, felt that Linnea had indeed inherited these attributes. It has been noticed that oftentimes such things are passed down through the generations. Linnea was also born with a caul, a thin white membrane across a newborn's face. Legend has it that if the baby is born with this caul, the child will have second sight, or what we call psychic abilities. Linnea Starr does past, present, and future, and has the gift of prophecy. It is written within scriptures that if you are able to give factual information, and prophecies indeed come true, the gift indeed comes from the divine realm. Linnea Starr does large interactive groups as well as private gatherings. For more information on Linnea Starr or to contact Linnea for a one-on-one consultation, visit her website at www.linneastar.com. That's www.linneastar.com. Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Susan Shumsky is our very special guest this hour. Her website is www.drsusan.org, and that's drsusan.org. You've got a new book out, Dr. Shumsky, called Awaken Your Divine Intuition. And I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about that book that we can share with our listeners.
Awaken Your Divine Intuition is about learning how to listen to the still small voice within our own intuitive voice, the voice of our higher self. And it's really written sort of like a seminar. So you can learn step by step how to awaken these special abilities, these gifts, you might call them gifts, of clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience, and be able to have direct contact and communication with the divine presence within you. So it's a really powerful book. It really works, and all the step-by-step instructions are there for helping people to open to their intuitive abilities.
Doctor, for our listeners who may not have had the opportunity of listening to you before here on the X Zone, could you tell us what it was in your life that pointed you in the direction that you are currently in, writing these great books, helping thousands of people to better understand and getting people to, connect with their own small inner voice?
Well, it was the 1960s. I was a hippie. I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area. And at that time, I was a flower child. And those of us who were flower children, probably your listeners don't realize this, but we were very, very interested in experiences of higher consciousness, higher states of consciousness, and experiences of awakening to spiritual enlightenment. I was studying various books. I was reading the Buddhist scriptures. I was reading Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. I was reading Tibetan Book of the Dead. I was reading Alan Watts' books. And in Alan Watts' books, he said that you need to find a meditation guide. Well, in 1966 in Berkeley, California, you did not find a meditation guide or anything remotely similar to that. So I asked a roommate, I said, how am I going to find this meditation guide that Alan Watts is talking about? And he said, well, have you ever tried to meditate on your own? And I said, well, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I lay down on my bed. I didn't even know you're supposed to sit up when you meditate. I lay on my bed and I sort of prayed for or asked for a meditation. Immediately, I was propelled into an ecstatic state. I felt a cord or rush of energy that was rushing from the tips of my toes all the way to the top of my head. I felt that I was being plugged into an electric socket, but in the most ecstatic way. And I just figured, well, I guess this is meditation. I didn't know any better. Little did I know that I had just had my first meditation and also my Kundalini awakening at the same time. And then it was not too long after that a friend of mine took me to the Transcendental Meditation, TM Meditation Center. I saw the picture of the guru on the wall, who was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And immediately I felt that I needed to learn this, that this was where I would learn how to meditate. And this guru, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, he ended up later being the guru of the Beatles and the guru of Deepak Chopra. So I went to his ashram in India to learn to become a meditation teacher. Not too long after that, a few years after that. And then I actually spent 22 years in his ashram. And then after leaving the ashram, I began to write books because I had found something that I actually did not learn in the ashram, and that was a way to listen to the still small voice of divine intuition.
Is that the little voice we all hear who never changes? The voice never changes? It is always so familiar to you?
Yes, as a matter of fact, and I'm really glad to hear that you're fortunate enough to hear that inner voice. It is the voice of divine intuition. It's the voice of our higher self, and it is always soothing and comforting and gives us guidance and wisdom, and it's much smarter than our ego.
I think in society they have made this voice into the little angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder.
Well, I only talk to the angel. I don't talk to the devil.
Me too.
The devil would be the ego voice, and the angel would be the voice of your higher self. So it's the voice of your higher self that you want to listen to because it's going to give you really good advice. And if you actually are willing to follow that advice, your life is going to be filled with miracles and wonders.
You know, I remember I must have been about 11 or 12, and I had this conversation in my mind with this voice. I said, "Who are you anyway?" And the voice said, "I am you." And we had this type of conversation. And it was like, wow, you're my conscience. And the voice said, and much more.
Yeah.
And it's always been there with me. So I fully understand what you mean, and I do hope that many of the listeners tonight are going, oh, I've got that too.
That's fantastic. That's great. It's a great blessing to be able to communicate with your higher self, with inner divinity, whatever you want to call it, God within. It's really a blessing, and so much enhances your life when you have that inner guidance, or be able to ask questions and receive divine guidance, which allows you to make decisions with peaceful confidence, that you always know you're on the right track when you're making the best decisions. And those decisions, those answers, they do come from your higher wisdom, your own higher self.
Where does reincarnation fall into the grand spectrum of speaking to your inner self and the inner knowledge that we have? And how can we tap into that inner knowledge?
Well, reincarnation is simply the soul traveling from one body to the next, to the next, to the next, as we evolve and become more and more connected to spirit with a capital S. So I think that once we are fully connected to spirit, it's really not necessary for us to reincarnate unless we're doing it for just a special mission or to do service to humanity.
But these stories that you hear from people who undergo hypnosis and they talk about past lives, some of them are, Joan of Arc, others are Cleopatra, others are Napoleon, others are, Queen Victoria.
Yeah, well, how many people can be those things?
Well, yeah, this is what I was getting at, Dr. Shumsky.
I don't put a whole lot of stock in people who
past life,
be famous celebrities from past lives, but it is possible to tap into your unconscious, subconscious memories,
right?
Because they do carry on from incarnation to incarnation, and I do believe in reincarnation. I'm a firm believer in it because I have memories from past lives. And by the way, I was never anybody famous.
Well,
so
you may not have been then, but in my eyes, you are a very famous person right now.
Not really, not very much. But in any case, our past experiences are those deep memories, and they can be recovered. And sometimes they're recovered under hypnosis. Other times they're just recovered through memories.
Let me ask you this then, Doctor. Is it possible that we bring with us from those past lives baggage that affect us today?
Absolutely, Rob. Yes. As a matter of fact, many of our false beliefs, habits, and conditioning that we carry around with us, what you might call baggage,
right,
comes from past experiences, past lives that we don't even remember. We don't know why. For example, we're afraid of heights, maybe, or we're afraid of confined spaces. And it could be that in a past life we were buried alive or that we fell off a cliff, So our past lives are affecting our current irrational fears and things like that. So, yeah, past lives have a great effect on us because our memories, our tendencies, our talents, those do not end when the body drops away. Those carry on with us from incarnation to incarnation. That's the reason why they're child prodigies. That's the reason why people have irrational fears or they have irrational, amazing talents. It's because they're past lives.
And
there's a lot of things that make a lot of sense when you believe in reincarnation.
Sure, and I've heard people say, I know how to do this, but I don't know how.
Right. Exactly. Very much so.
Do we seek out the same people that we have had relationships with in past lives?
Absolutely, we do. Anybody that you're close to, people in your family, people that you work with, close associates, these are all people you've known from the past. They're your family, really, and they continue with you incarnation to incarnation. It just keeps going on and on.
So basically, it's like we're all members of a theater company, and each time we come back in a new life, we're just part of a new play.
I think that's really an excellent analogy because basically that's really all that we're doing is living in a play, kind of a illusory play, just as Shakespeare says.
So then let me ask you, Dr. Susan, what is the ultimate goal of life?
The ultimate goal is to realize who you really are. That's, in my opinion, that's the ultimate goal. And realizing who you really are rather than who you think you are. Who you think you are is your ego. That's your past history, your experiences. It's your bank account and your job and how you look in the mirror and your family, all the things you identify yourself with. Who you really are is none of those things. Who you really are is a divine, powerful, spiritual being of light that is eternal, immortal, as all-powerful, all-knowing. And it's totally different than how we identify who we are. So once you realize who you are, then you have attained the goal of life, in my opinion.
Dr. Shumsky, please stand by. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation, my guest this hour is Dr. Susan Shumsky. Her website is drsusan.org. That's drsusan.org. And we'll both be back on the other side of this news break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Thomas Jefferson was a Burgess of 27 when he met Martha Wales Skelton, a 22-year-old widowed heiress who was fondly called Patty by her family. They were married on January the 1st, 1772, and they took up residence in a cabin on the building site on top of a Virginia mountain that Thomas had named Monticello. As Thomas and Patty slowly built their first version of the great house at Monticello, the Revolutionary War was heating up. Patty, with difficulty, bore 5 children, but only 2 girls survived. Thomas's political career developed to the point where he was often away from home, but after he authored and signed the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia, he resolved never again to leave his wife. He was elected the governor of Virginia, just as that state became the Revolution's last battleground. The Revolutionary War ended in 1781, and Thomas gladly retired altogether to my family, my farm, and my books. But Patty continued to want to bear her treasured husband a son, and late in the summer of 1782, she died of kidney failure at the age of 33, 4 months after having borne yet another girl. Thomas was so devastated by her death that he never remarried. He mourned her for the rest of his life, even as he helped to frame the peace in France and then became the first Secretary of State, the second Vice President, and the third President of the United States. This story is true. Thomas Jefferson was such an obsessive letter writer and record keeper that we know where he was and what he was doing nearly every day of his adult life. Every significant thing he says in My Thomas comes from his contemporary writings. My Thomas by Roberta Grimes is now available at Barnes & Noble, Costco, Target, Books A Million, Hudson Booksellers, Kmart, Walmart, Sam's Club, Walgreens, CVS, and online at Amazon.com. You can visit Roberta Grimes online at www.robertagrimes.com.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Unwilling to be the government's deadly assassin, gifted psychic Kahara Mitchell went AWOL and ended up buried under rubble in the wake of a great tsunami. She regained consciousness far from Earth on the medical ship of a Daguerrean intergalactic fleet. Has she been rescued or abducted by aliens? The Chalice of Carrie, Kahira O'Donnell's latest paranormal science fiction romance, is the passionate story of an Earth woman and her destined mates, twin kings from another galaxy. Kahara uses her gifts fighting alongside Lords Rom and Ra in a war that will determine the destiny of galaxies. The Chalice of Carrie by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at KahiraO'Donnell.com or at Amazon.com. You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. What Happened in Benghazi is revealed by Nicholas Genix, author of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. He informs the American people that President Obama deceived them by advocating a strong foreign policy prior to the 2012 presidential election, and Hillary Clinton supported this deception. As the title infers, there is a connection between Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. Ample evidence informs Americans that Obama's early indoctrination in the Quran developed an affinity for Islam, why the Quran is the source of discontent in many countries, and why the Obama foreign policy deception led to poor military action and caused the loss of American lives in Benghazi. Genix provides 36 questions for the Select Committee on Benghazi to validate if Americans are justified to mistrust President Obama and Hillary Clinton. An overview of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi is presented on the website www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Annie Callahan, dedicated to negotiating a position for Earth within the Daguerrean Coalition, had trained for 3 years to become an Earth ambassador. Yet, the very eve of her arrival at the capital ruling planet, she is claimed as destined mate to an oversized, mating-maddened vamp who swears he will never release her. Lord Aztaran, king of the Macian sector, has waited over 900 years for his destined mate. Having found her as an alpha vamp, he is unable to relinquish Annie, virtually holding her hostage until he can claim her. Yet Macians cannot survive without their mate's love. How could he strip her of her citizenship, her ambassadorship, and her freedom and expect to win her heart? With All That I Am by Kahira O'Donnell is the latest book in this exciting series, The Daguerrean Chronicles, guaranteed to keep readers coming back for more. With All That I Am by Kahira O'Donnell is available on Amazon.com and KahiraO'Donnell.com. Exonation, my guest this hour is Dr. Susan Shumsky. We're going to be talking this part of the interview about her new book entitled Awaken Your Divine Intervention, Receive Wisdom's Blessings and Love by Connecting with Spirit. And now you're the author of 13 books, and you call yourself a spiritual teacher. What does a spiritual teacher do, Dr. Shumsky?
In my opinion, a spiritual teacher would be someone who empowers others to realize who they really are. Mm-hmm. In other words, they're not trying to gain fans and minions.
Right.
What they're doing is they're assisting people in becoming more of who they really are and realizing their true potential so that they can have greater self-confidence, self-worth, self-acceptance, and ultimately express their true desires and become very creative in their own field, whatever that is.
You know, over the years, the word spirituality has been attached to many religious philosophies. In your opinion, based on your expertise and the number of years that you have been learning and teaching what you do, what is your definition of spirituality?
I think that somebody who is spiritual would be someone who's connected to their true divine nature, that they're connected with spirit with a capital S, which is that power and presence that underlies the universe and gives rise to it. So I think the spiritual person would be someone who is dedicating their life, not necessarily solely, but that they have dedicated a lot of their attention and a lot of their energy into raising their consciousness and into becoming more connected with their divine self, with who they really are.
Why do you think that intuition is important in today's economic climate?
I think the reason why intuition is so important today as to compared to maybe decades past is because all the institutions that we used to rely on, such as the banks and our pensions and our jobs and our security on so many levels, we just can't rely on them anymore. So where are we going to turn when we want answers to difficult conundrums that we find ourselves in? How are we going to even manage our lives anymore when we can't rely on anything that we used to be able to rely on? So there is one thing that we can rely on, though, and that is our higher self, which knows the truth and which is, as I said before, is much smarter than our ego, and it can give us wisdom. It can give us divine guidance so that we would not be lost on our pathway. It will show us the way. It's like an inner lighthouse that gives us direction and shows us exactly where to go as long as we're willing to listen to it. So it's incredibly powerful. Our intuition is really our higher self speaking to us.
But let's say I am a farmer in the middle of the U.S., and I've been raising cows for all my life. How is my inner intuition going to help me when it comes to banking? I've never done this before. You know, like I don't know the stock market. I don't know where to put my money in order so that when I retire, I will have the financial structure that I will need for myself and my family. How does my intuition help me with that?
Well, the thing is to start a dialogue with your intuition. Start asking questions within to your higher self and start receiving advice, and then follow that advice and see where it leads you. And amazingly, it's going to lead you to greater security, greater self-confidence, and you'll know better how to manage various things in your life. Now, this doesn't mean that your higher self is your only educator. Your higher self may guide you to certain books or certain teachers or certain courses so that you can learn things. It doesn't mean that that the only place you're going to get anything is from your higher self. It means that you'll be guided to go where you need to go. For example, if you have a health problem and you ask spirit about it, then you'll be guided to what is the best course of action to take, whether it's to go to this doctor or that doctor or do this particular procedure or whatever it is that is best for you. So your higher self can guide you on your pathway, and I found that it is exceedingly reliable.
Tell me about the inner genius.
Well, that really is our inner genius, that higher self within us, because it is the source of creative expression. So we have that creativity that's really our potential. It is our inner genius. And for example, Mozart, he said that he didn't even write any of these compositions. He just heard the music and wrote it down. So what he was hearing is he was hearing divine inspiration. He was receiving divine revelation. He was listening to his divine intuition. So that is something that we can all develop. And by the way, it comes through practice. It's just like you learn anything else in life. If you want to learn how to spell, you want to learn how to write, you want to learn how to read, you want to learn how to play an instrument.
Right.
Well, you have to practice at it. You're not just going to immediately, the first time you sit down, be able to play Beethoven on the piano. You have to learn how to do it. So similarly, you can develop your intuition that way. And what I teach is maybe a little different than other people. And that is, I teach people how to receive these messages and this inner guidance and these intuitive impressions at will, whenever you want. In other words, asking and receiving at will. And you can develop your clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient abilities at will. It is possible to do that.
So basically, practice makes perfect, and seek and ye shall find.
Yes, practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
That's how we can develop anything, including things like intuition and meditation. And, don't stop at mundane things. You can also learn spiritual things the same way. Practice makes perfect. Practice, practice, practice.
What is the workings of meditation? How does meditation work?
Wow, well, that's interesting. And there have been some scientific studies done on it, where they talk about the brain waves getting into coherent states where the various hemispheres of the brain start to work in coherence with each other. In other words, one part of the brain will be making the same kind of wave, whether that's alpha or theta or whatever it is. The waves will look similar in all the hemispheres. But what the mechanics of that are, it's just a matter of relaxing and getting centered and quiet within and being able to go into an altered state of consciousness, shall we say, a deeper state of consciousness than our normal waking state. It's a different state of consciousness than dreaming. It's a different state of consciousness than deep sleep. It's what they call in India, they call it Turiya, which means the fourth state. So waking, dreaming, and sleeping are three states of consciousness. The fourth one is what might be called transcendental consciousness, where you're in a state of deep relaxation. The mind is quieted down. The body is in a very interesting state because when you're really in a deep state of meditation, your breathing becomes very different. It's as if you're not even breathing. The breath becomes very, very quiet and still. And the breath, they call it a state of suspension of breath, but actually the breath is not suspended. It's just that the breath is so quiet that it becomes imperceptible. And in this quiet state, the life force energy that they call prana in India, and in China they call it chi, and in Japan they call it ki, that life force energy is able to move more freely through the conduits of energy in your subtle body, which are called nadi. They're also called meridian in China. So that subtle energy is able to move through even subtler conduits of energy, and your breath becomes very quiet and still. And it has tremendous benefits for health, for well-being, mental and physical health, both. So I'm really a big fan of meditation. I think meditation is the panacea of many of humanity's ills.
When we sleep and we're in between the dream states, could that period be looked at as a meditative state?
Between the state of sleeping and waking is often thought of as a meditative state because we're not quite awake, we're not quite asleep, we're somewhere in between, and we're in a state of in many cases, people feel a state of inner bliss during that period. So that could be said to be a meditative state, yes.
How can people learn how to meditate?
Well, I'm gonna give your listeners a couple tips right here. Not only am I going to tell you how to meditate, but also how to listen to the inner voice, the divine voice, the still small voice. And that is very simple. All that you need to do is you just sit down in a chair, you close your eyes, and you take a few deep breaths. And the breath should be something like this. I'll demonstrate just sort of like this. Breathing in through the nose and taking a really deep breath. And then you can breathe out through the nose or the mouth, either way. And just take a few deep breaths like that, and then breathe normally. And you'll notice that you get a little more quiet, and then you might take a few more like that, maybe 3 more or so. Then you get into an even more quiet state. And then eventually, if you just take a few deep breaths and get more centered and more quiet within yourself, then you'll be in a state of meditation. And it's not only taking the deep breaths, it's also the intention to go into the deep meditation. And in addition to that, if you so choose, you may call upon a divine being to help you. Call upon a divine being by name to help you. So you might do that. It's not necessary, but you might if you wish. And then when you're in that state, that deep state of meditation, you do something that people normally do not do during deep meditation. And that is you ask. You ask a question, specific question. You ask for guidance. You ask for inspiration. You ask for something. You ask for a specific experience, possibly. And then you take another big, deep breath, and you do what I call the do nothing program. That means you do nothing, nothing, and less than nothing. In other words, you are in a state of being open to receive, simply open to receive. And then in that state, the still small voice will speak to you. It will give you either a vision, it'll give you some words, or it'll give you a feeling. So visual would be clairvoyance. You're seeing something with your mind's eye. Hearing would be clairaudience, and that means that you're hearing some words that are coming into your mind, as you had that experience you described before.
Right.
Just some words coming into your mind. And then clairsentience would be you just get a certain feeling, a certain gut feeling about something. So those are the 3 basic ways that we receive messages from Spirit with a capital S when we're receiving them at will.
Now, years ago, The Secret was a very, very popular book. What is the law of attraction, Dr. Shumsky, and is it related to intuition?
It's related to intuition in a weird kind of way. The law of attraction is really the same thing as the law of karma, and that law states it is done unto you as you believe. In other words, if your deepest belief and deepest conviction is that you are always poor, that you live in poverty, then you're just going to live in poverty. No matter how much you try to get out of it, if you still believe that you deserve to be poor, and if you continue to have that belief and never get rid of that belief because you were brainwashed that way as a child or in past lives or whatever, then you won't be able to crawl out of that hole, for example. So the law of karma states it is done unto you as you believe. So that means that you're creating your own destiny, your own reality through your thoughts, your beliefs, your deepest convictions. And that's what manifests in your life. So if you can change those beliefs, and which you can do, if you can change your beliefs and your convictions, then you will change your life. So it's really that simple. Now, the law of attraction, many people use that law because they saw the Secret or they read the book. And so they're using it. They create a list of things they want to manifest, and then they use that law to manifest those things in their life. And sometimes without really thinking, is this something good for me or not? I mean, here I have this list of things, and now I've manifested them, and I'm really miserable. I didn't want those things in the first place. I just made a list arbitrarily. So that's making a list from your ego. And I call that praying backwards, because what you're doing is you're praying without knowing whether it's highest wisdom for you to acquire those things in the first place. If you pray forwards, that would be the first step would be to ask your higher self, your inner wisdom, whether it's highest wisdom to acquire such and such. You'd ask your higher self for advice about what's highest wisdom for you to do with this life. In other words, get more in touch with your true purpose,
Right.
Your heart's desires, your real heart's desires, your deepest heart's desires, that which you were born to do. And once you get in touch with that, then you can make your list, your manifestation list. And when you start to manifest those things, then you're happy because you're fulfilling your true destiny, your true purpose. So you're living in accordance with the laws of nature. Now you're living a life that is profound and meaningful. There's great meaning to your life. Your life takes on new tenor because you're now not going against the flow of almighty nature. You're going with the flow, and you're manifesting that which is highest wisdom and highest good for you.
So am I correct in saying that be careful for what you ask?
Yes.
Dr. Shumsky, please stand by. Great talking to you again. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dr. Susan.
It's my pleasure.
And Exonation, I'll be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the Exxon from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to find out more information about Dr. Shumsky, she has a great website, www.drsusan.org. That's drsusan.org. And we'll both be back. Don't go away.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. If you enjoy reading a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love From Out of the Woodwork by William S. Peckham. Sean Kennedy, a Toronto contractor, buys derelict houses, guts them, and turns them into multi-family dwellings. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, a century house in ruins, and starts the renovation, the house fights back. He is visited by ghosts of owners past. His visions are triggered by touching an oak mantle, reading a faded letter, opening an old locket, or opening a brand new casket in the basement.
These visions will take you on a trip across southern Ontario from Niagara Falls to Toronto to Kingston. From Out of the Woodwork is now available in paperback and on your favorite electronic reader. To order your copy of From Out of the Woodwork, go to www.williamspeckham.com. That's www.williamspeckham.com. Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Susan Shumsky is my very special guest this hour. This part of the interview, we've been talking to Dr. Shumsky about her new book, Awaken Your Divine Intuition. And you can find out more about Dr. Shumsky, her courses that she has, where she's going to be speaking, and much, much more on her very informative website at www.drsusan.org. That's www.drsusan.org. What has ever happened to you, Doctor, when you have followed your intuition?
Wow, when you follow your intuition, miracles take place in your life. For example, when I wanted to get my very first book published, which was called Divine Revelation, I listened to that inner voice in every step of the way of not only writing the book, but also getting it published. And even though everything in my environment was telling me, no, my higher self, spirit within me, was telling me yes, 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 and guiding me to my agent and telling me to continue with that same agent, even though he kept rejecting me over and over. And it was just a crazy, crazy ride. But I just listened to the inner voice and trusted it and followed it. And when I did that, Simon & Schuster published my first book, which is unheard of, by the way.
And the rest is history, so to speak.
Yeah.
And what happens if you ignore your intuition?
Well, things don't go your way too well. Like, for example, the time when I was told over and over by Spirit that I should quit this job that I had, which was the job as a security guard. And instead of listening to the inner voice, I kept the job, held on to the job, because I was afraid that if I quit my stupid minimum wage job that I would starve to death. So, I kept it, and then ended up that, well, my relief didn't come one night, and the supervisor said that I had to stay. But long story short, I left, abandoned my post, and then supervisor fired me, and then my higher self was celebrating, having a huge party, and so excited that I had gotten rid of that stupid job. But then I begged for the job back to the supervisor because I was stubborn and I didn't listen. So the very next night, I was closing the gates, and this huge wrought iron gate fell on top of me, and I nearly had to have my leg amputated, and I had 4 operations. So that's what happened when I didn't listen.
Ouch. But you're all right now?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. It was in 1994.
Lesson well learned. Listen, Dr. Shumsky, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a great pleasure. Let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and where they can buy your books.
Well, I suggest people buy my books on Amazon.com because they're less expensive there and you get them faster. But you are certainly welcome to go to my website, which is drsusan.org. And on that website, you can read the first chapter of every one of my books. And you can find out so many things. You can listen to teleseminars. You can read articles, all for free, and listen to interviews. And there's just really a lot on that website. Also, another website is divinetravels.com. That's DIVINETRAVELS.com. That's Divine Travels, plural. It's a good idea to subscribe there because you'll find out about tours, retreats to sacred destinations, and tours to sacred destinations, and cruise ship seminars, all the wonderful things that you can partake in.
Dr. Shumsky, again, thank you so much for joining us. Take care of yourself, and I look forward to the next time that you and I meet back here in the X Zone. But until then,
thank you.
The very best to you.
You too.
Good night, Doctor.
Good night.
X Zone Nation, my guest this hour has been Dr. Susan Shumsky. www.drsusan.org. Well, that's it for tonight. I've got to run, but as I say each and every night, always keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night, everyone.